The chips clatter, a sickeningly familiar sound. I watch Daniel from across the VIP room of the Golden Palace, a place I own, though he doesn't know that. He's sweating, his usually pristine suit rumpled. He's losing. Badly. My fingers trace the faint indentation on my ring finger, a ghost of the diamond and sapphire heirloom my grandmother left me, the one he lost in another lifetime, at a table just like this. He scribbles his name on an IOU, his hand shaking. The man across from him, a cool silhouette I handpicked, takes the slip of paper. It's all happening again, just as I remember. But this time, I'm not the grieving widow-to-be. This time, I'm the architect of his downfall. A waitress, clumsy on cue, stumbles. Her tray clatters, and a conveniently spilled drink soaks the sleeve of Daniel's opponent. As the man dabs at the stain, a card, an ace of spades, slides from his cuff. Gasps ripple through the table. Daniel's eyes widen, then narrow in manufactured outrage. My lips curve into a smile, cold and sharp. The accident, like everything else tonight, was my design. Round two, Daniel, and this time I'm holding all the aces. It wasn't always like this. Or rather, it was, but I was too blind to see it. 5 years ago, in what I now call my first life, I met Daniel. He was charming, a whirlwind of expensive dinners, rooftop bar laughter, and declarations of undying love. He painted a picture of a perfect future, and I, young and naive, dived headfirst into his beautiful mirage. Our wedding was lavish, a fairy tale spun from my family's money and his boundless ambition. He was the golden boy, and I was his adoring wife. His best friend, Tyler, was always there, a steady, supportive presence. "You two are perfect together," he'd say, clapping Daniel on the back, his eyes lingering a moment too long on me. I thought it was friendship. It was something else, something covetous and quiet. I see it now, in the sharp clarity of hindsight. Tyler was the kind of man who waited in the wings, offering a shoulder to cry on, all the while hoping the stage would clear. He was always just a little too eager to hear about our problems, his sympathy a little too practiced. He'd listen to my worries about Daniel's late nights, his business meetings that reeked of stale smoke and desperation, and he'd nod, his brow furrowed. "He's just under a lot of pressure, Alara," he'd say. "He'll pull through, he always does." But there was a glint in his eye, a satisfaction that I missed, blinded by my own anxieties. And then there was Emma, my younger sister. My shadow, my confidant, or so I believed. She'd gush about Daniel, about how lucky I was. "He's so handsome, Alara, and so successful." Her support was a performance, a carefully crafted act to mask the green monster of jealousy that coiled in her gut. Emma always wanted what I had, but she was better at hiding it than Tyler. She played the part of the doting sister, borrowing my clothes, my car, and eventually, my husband. She'd be the first to arrive with a comforting hug when Daniel's behavior grew erratic, her eyes wide with feigned concern. "Are you okay, sis? He seems stressed." Stressed. That was the euphemism we all used. In that first life, Daniel's gambling addiction didn't surface slowly. It erupted. It started with client entertainment at the casino, then a few friendly games with associates. Soon, it was every night. The arguments became our daily bread. I pleaded, I reasoned, I threatened. I tried to help, suggesting therapy, support groups, anything. He'd be contrite for a day, full of promises he never intended to keep, and then the lure of the tables would pull him back. He started losing. First, small amounts, then larger chunks of his business capital, then our savings, then my inheritance. Each loss was followed by a torrent of excuses, blame shifting like a seasoned con artist. It was the dealer, the rigged game, a run of bad luck. And then, inevitably, it was my fault. "You stress me out, Alara," he'd yell. "You're bad luck. Every time you ask me about money, I lose." He'd storm out, leaving me in the wreckage of our once happy home, the scent of his expensive cologne mixed with the stale odor of fear. Family heirlooms vanished, pawned for a few more chips, a few more hours of chasing the elusive win. My grandmother's pearls, my mother's silver, all gone. I remember the day I confronted him about a missing antique clock, a piece that had been in my family for generations. He looked me straight in the eye and lied. "It's being repaired, darling. The mechanism was faulty." I found the pawn ticket in his coat pocket later that day. The true gut punch, the one that shattered the last vestiges of my denial, came on a Tuesday afternoon. I came home early, a migraine pounding behind my eyes. I heard voices from our bedroom, Daniel's and Emma's. Not hushed guilty whispers, but casual, conspiratorial tones. I pushed the door open a crack, my heart a cold stone in my chest. "We can get at least 50 grand for it," Daniel was saying. "It's vintage antique. Some collector will snap it up." Emma's voice sickeningly sweet. "And she won't even notice it's gone for a while. She's so stressed about your business lately." Then I saw it. My grandmother's ring. My ring. Daniel was holding it up to the light, inspecting it like a piece of merchandise. Emma was beside him, her hand on his arm, a greedy smile on her face. The ring I wore every day, the ring he'd sworn to cherish as a symbol of our love, was just another asset to be liquidated for his next poker stake. The betrayal was absolute, a physical blow that knocked the air from my lungs. They weren't just stealing from me, they were carving out pieces of my soul and selling them cheap. His business partner, Marcus Thorne, was another cog in Daniel's destructive machine. Marcus, older, smoother, always impeccably dressed. He projected an air of weary sophistication, as if Daniel's messes were a tiresome but manageable burden. He helped Daniel hide assets during our divorce, a slow, agonizing process. Shell corporations, offshore accounts. Marcus knew all the tricks. He'd pat my hand, his expression sympathetic. "Laura, my dear, Daniel is complicated, but he's not a bad man, just misguided." Misguided. Another pretty word for a cruel, selfish bastard. Marcus was the silent enabler, the one who cleaned up the bloodstains and made sure the bodies were buried deep. He was, I later realized, profiting from Daniel's chaos, siphoning off funds for himself. The divorce was finalized on a rainy April morning. I felt a flicker of something like relief, quickly extinguished by an overwhelming sense of emptiness. A week later, I was dead. A car accident. Brake failure, they called it. I remember the screech of tires, the blinding headlights, a searing pain, and then nothing, until I woke up, gasping for breath, my heart hammering, in my old apartment. Not the lavish prison Daniel had built for me, but the sunny little place I'd lived in before him. My calendar showed a date 5 years earlier. 5 years. Before the whirlwind romance, before the lies, before the ring on my finger became a target. My memories were intact, a perfect, horrifying crystal. The betrayal, the pain, the chilling finality of death, it was all there, branded onto my soul. For a week, I barely moved, haunted by the echoes of a life I'd already lived and lost. The trauma was a living thing, coiling around my chest, stealing my breath. "Avoid him," a small, sane voice whispered. "Run, disappear, start a new life, far away from Daniel and his toxic orbit." But then, a different voice emerged, colder, harder. A voice born from the ashes of my first life. Why should I run? Why should I be the one to hide? He took everything from me, my love, my trust, my family, my life. This time, I wouldn't be a victim. This time, I would be the predator. So I didn't avoid Daniel. When he accidentally bumped into me at that same coffee shop, spilling latte down my blouse just like before, I didn't recoil. I smiled, a little too brightly. I let him charm me again. I played my part, the innocent, slightly flustered girl, captivated by his attention. But this time, I knew the script. I knew every line, every pause, every deceitful glance. And this time, I was rewriting the ending. Revenge wasn't just a dish best served cold, it was a feast I would spend 5 years preparing. My second chance wasn't just about Daniel, it was about reclaiming myself. In my previous life, I'd been a moderately successful interior designer, my ambitions always taking a back seat to Daniel's grander schemes. This time, I poured every ounce of my resurrected energy into my work. My designs became bolder, more innovative. I wasn't just decorating spaces, I was creating experiences. The memories of Daniel's financial ruin, his desperate moves, his network of shady associates, They became my roadmap. I knew which investments would flourish and which would crumble. I cultivated connections with the wealthy elite, the kind of people Daniel only dreamed of impressing. My clients weren't just clients, they were sources of information, unwitting pawns in my long game. Mrs. Albright, with her penchant for Italian antiques and her husband's shipping empire. Mr. Chen, the tech mogul who needed his penthouse to scream new money. But tastefully, they all confided in me, shared snippets of boardroom gossip, complained about unreliable business partners. I listened, I absorbed, I filed it all away. Daniel's company, a flashy tech startup built on hype and borrowed capital, was already teetering on the brink of failure in my first life when he met me. This time, I knew its trajectory. While he was busy wooing me with cheap flowers and borrowed lines, I was making moves. Through a labyrinth of shell corporations, so intricate even Marcus Thorne would have been impressed, I began acquiring its debt. Then, shares. Quietly, anonymously, I became the silent owner of Daniel's sinking ship. He had no idea. He was too busy planning our future, a future I was meticulously rigging. One sun-drenched afternoon, he surprised me. "Darling," he announced, flourishing 2 tickets to Paris like a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat. "A romantic getaway, just the 2 of us." His eyes gleamed with self-satisfaction. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that he'd bought those tickets with my credit card. A new one he'd convinced me to get with a ridiculously high limit, for emergencies, of course. In my first life, I'd been furious, then pathetically grateful for the gesture, burying my anger under a veneer of wifely appreciation. This time, I played my part. I gasped, my hand flying to my chest. "Oh, Daniel, Paris! It's so thoughtful of you. You always know how to spoil me." I let him preen, let him bask in my feigned delight. He was so predictable, so easily manipulated by his own ego. While we strolled along the Seine, Daniel pointing out landmarks with the air of a conquering hero, my real work was happening back in the States. My lawyer, a shark in a bespoke suit named Alastair Finch, was finalizing the terms of a cash infusion for Daniel's company. Generous terms on the surface, but buried in the fine print were clauses that gave my shell corporation, Phoenix Holdings, unprecedented control. Default triggers, equity conversions, board seats. Daniel, blinded by the sudden influx of cash, the lifeline he desperately needed, barely skimmed the document. He was too busy celebrating his genius negotiation skills. "You see, Alara?" He bragged over champagne at a ridiculously expensive Parisian restaurant. "I told you I could turn things around. This investor, they see the potential. They believe in me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside, nestled on satin, was a ring. A cheap, gaudy replica of my grandmother's ring. The stones were glass, the metal flimsy. "I know how much you loved your grandmother's ring," he said, his voice thick with false sentiment. "I wanted you to have something similar, something to remember her by, until we can afford the real thing again." In my first life, this gesture had brought tears to my eyes, tears of sadness for what I'd lost, and a foolish hope that he understood. This time, it took every ounce of my control not to laugh in his face. I let him slip the tawdry thing onto my finger. "It's beautiful, Daniel," I lied, my voice soft. "Thank you." The fallout wasn't immediate, but it was inevitable. A month later, back in New York, Daniel hosted a lavish business dinner to celebrate his company's turnaround. He was expansive, a picture of success, regaling his guests with tales of his Parisian triumph and his brilliant financial acumen. Then, Alastair Finch, representing the anonymous investor, stood up. He wasn't just an investor's representative. He was now on the board. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alastair began, his voice smooth and cutting, "Phoenix Holdings is delighted to be partnering with Mr. Hayes, and as part of that partnership, we will be initiating a strategic restructuring of the company to ensure long-term viability and profitability." He outlined the changes new management roles, all reporting to Phoenix, budget cuts, starting with Daniel's extravagant expense account, and a thorough audit of all previous financials. And Daniel's face went from ruddy confidence to pale shock. The color drained from his cheeks as if a tap had been opened. He stammered, trying to regain control, but Alastair's pronouncements were swift and brutal. The room fell silent, the clinking of cutlery the only sound. Daniel looked like a man who'd just been told his prize-winning racehorse was actually a donkey in disguise. Later that night, he paced our apartment like a caged animal. Restructuring? What restructuring? This wasn't part of the deal. That lawyer, he's trying to screw me over. He ranted, he raved, he threw a crystal glass against the wall, a glass I'd chosen, paid for. I need to talk to this investor. I need to renegotiate. I went to him, my expression a perfect mask of concern. I put my arms around him, stroking his back. Oh, Daniel, it sounds awful. But I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. You're so clever, you'll sort it out. I let him lean on me, let him believe I was his rock, his solace. He had no idea that the storm engulfing him was of my making, that the anonymous investor he was railing against was the woman holding him, quietly, coldly, controlling his financial future. The cheap replica ring on my finger felt like a tiny, satisfying weight. He was trapped, and he didn't even know the name of his jailer. Daniel, despite the restructuring, still hadn't grasped the extent of his predicament. He was like a fly caught in a web, struggling futilely, only entangling himself further. His ego wouldn't allow him to see the truth. He still believed he could outsmart the situation, find a new angle, a new investor. And who better to exploit for connections than his loving wife and her doting sister? Emma. My dear, treacherous sister. She and Daniel had always been thick as thieves, their whispers and shared glances a constant, irritating reminder of their bond. This time, their conspiracy was aimed at leveraging my carefully cultivated social network for a new business venture Daniel was cooking up. Some ill-conceived property development scheme. I accidentally saw the text messages. Daniel had left his phone on the nightstand, a careless habit I now exploited. Emma, sweetie, make sure Alara invites the Hendersons to that dinner. Old man Henderson is loaded and looking to invest in property. Ilara can charm him. You work on Mrs. H. We'll be rolling in it. Emma's reply, consider it done, Danny boy. She'll do anything if she thinks it's helping you. The casual cruelty of it still stung, but it was a cold, distant pain now, overshadowed by the grim satisfaction of my impending countermove. I played my part beautifully. When Emma suggested inviting the Hendersons and a few other wealthy couples to a dinner party at our home, I feigned enthusiastic agreement. What a wonderful idea, Emma. It'll be fun. And Daniel, perhaps you can casually mention your new project? You never know who might be interested. I appeared oblivious, the supportive wife, eager to please. Daniel beamed, convinced of his own cleverness and my gullibility. Emma shot him a triumphant smirk over my head. They were such amateurs. The dinner party was my stage. I chose the menu, the wine, the flowers, all with meticulous care. Daniel and Emma arrived radiating confidence. Daniel in a new suit, bought on credit, I was sure. Emma in a dress that was a size too small and a shade too bright. They were ready for their performance, ready to charm and manipulate their way into the investors' pockets. What they didn't know was that I'd already had my own, much more persuasive conversations with the Hendersons and the other potential investors. A quiet lunch here, a discreet phone call there. I didn't need to slander Daniel overtly. I simply presented facts. Unflattering, verifiable facts about his past business failures, his mounting debts, the precarious nature of his current company under new management. I painted a picture of a man drowning, desperately seeking a life raft, and warned them, subtly, that they might be pulled under with him. I even hinted at his burgeoning gambling problem, a sad weakness I was trying to help him overcome. The investors arrived, polite but distant. Mr. Henderson, a bluff, hearty man who usually loved Daniel's boisterous stories, was strangely subdued. His wife, who normally gushed over my decor, offered clipped, cool compliments. Daniel launched into his pitch, his voice overly loud, his jokes falling flat. Emma tried her coquettish routine, but her smiles were met with polite, unyielding gazes. The atmosphere grew increasingly arctic. The lavish food I'd prepared seemed to turn to ash in their mouths. The investment deal, of course, died before the dessert course was served. Mr. Henderson made a vague excuse about diversifying too much and quickly changed the subject. The other investors followed suit. Daniel's face was a mask of confusion, then dawning horror. Emma looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. The drive home from dropping Emma off must have been a masterpiece of recrimination. The next morning, Emma appeared at my door, mascara streaking her face, her voice hoarse from crying. Daniel, he was so cruel, Alara. He said it was all my fault, that I ruined everything. He said I was useless. She sobbed into my shoulder, the picture of a wronged woman. I held her, stroked her hair, murmured comforting platitudes. Oh, Emma, I'm so sorry. He's just under a lot of stress. He doesn't mean it. Inside, I felt nothing but a cold, hard satisfaction. I had orchestrated their conflict, turned their own greed and duplicity against them. They were so busy pointing fingers at each other, they didn't see the puppeteer pulling their strings. Daniel's reaction to this latest failure was predictable. His gambling, always his crutch, intensified. The stakes got higher, the nights longer. He was chasing losses, desperate to prove he was still a winner, still in control. He started frequenting new, more exclusive poker rooms, seeking out bigger fish. And I was only too happy to help him find them. Darling, I said one evening, feigning concern over his mounting stress, I met some fascinating people at that charity gala last week. They're really into poker. Apparently, they have these private games, very high class. Perhaps you should meet them. It might be a good way to network, take your mind off things. He seized on the suggestion like a drowning man grasping at a straw. Really? High class, you say? Who are they? Oh, just some successful businessmen, I said vaguely. I'll give you their contact. Be careful though, darling. I hear they play for very high stakes. The new poker friends I introduced him to were, of course, anything but casual players. They were professionals, sharks I'd hired, their skills honed in the cutthroat world of international poker circuits. I bankrolled them, gave them their instructions, let him win a little at first, build his confidence, then bleed him dry. Slowly, methodically. He thought he was playing with wealthy amateurs. He had no idea he was a lamb being led to a meticulously planned slaughter. The casino floor was Daniel's battlefield, but I was the one commanding the army. The cheap replica ring Daniel had given me in Paris disappeared from my jewelry box. I knew, with sickening certainty, where it had gone, or rather, where the real one had gone. My grandmother's ring, the one I'd managed to keep hidden, a sacred relic of my past life and my future vengeance. He must have found it. He must have taken it. I noticed it was missing a few days later, letting a carefully calibrated distress seep into my voice. Daniel, have you seen my grandmother's ring? The sapphire one? I can't find it anywhere. I made a show of searching, my brow furrowed, my voice trembling slightly. I didn't accuse him, didn't even hint at suspicion. I just let him see my distress, my apparent helplessness. He feigned surprise, then concern. Your grandmother's ring? No, darling, I haven't seen it. Are you sure you know where you last put it? He even helped me search, his expression a perfect mask of worried innocence. The man was a consummate actor. He'd probably already pawned it, or worse, used it as collateral in some desperate high-stakes game. My network, cultivated over years of patient observation and strategic kindnesses, was my eyes and ears. A discreet inquiry here, a casual question there. It didn't take long to track him. He'd been seen at an underground poker game, one notorious for its ruthless players and astronomical stakes. A game where a ring like my grandmother's would be a prized chip. This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for, the culmination of one of my most personal vendettas. I didn't go to the game myself. That would be too obvious, too risky. Instead, I made a call, an anonymous tip to one of the regular players, a man known for his skill and his discreet nature. I bankrolled him, giving him a substantial sum, enough to ensure he could outlast and outplay Daniel. His instructions were simple. Win the ring, no questions asked. The game, I heard later, was brutal. Daniel, fueled by desperation and a dwindling supply of my money, was reckless. He lost hand after hand, his composure crumbling with each defeat. Finally, inevitably, he put the ring on the table. My ring, my grandmother's legacy. He lost it on a bluff, a stupid, arrogant move. My anonymous champion did his job. He won the ring. And, as per my further instructions, he didn't keep it. The next day, Marcus Thorne, Daniel's ever-present business partner, the man who had helped him hide assets from me in our first life, walked into my office. He placed a small velvet box on my desk. Inside, gleaming softly against the satin, was my grandmother's ring. "A mutual acquaintance asked me to return this to you, Alara," Marcus said, his expression unreadable. "He said it belongs with its rightful owner." I looked at him, a silent question in my eyes. Marcus had always been an enigma, loyal only to himself, or so I thought. Had he finally chosen a side? Or was this just another calculated move in his own complex game? "Consider it a professional courtesy," he added, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "Daniel is becoming increasingly unpredictable, bad for business." I nodded slowly. "Thank you, Marcus." He knew, he must have known, or at least suspected my involvement. But he also knew Daniel was a sinking ship, and Marcus Thorne was not one to go down with it. His loyalty, it seemed, was transferable to the winning side. Daniel returned home that night, a broken man. Frantic, pale, his eyes darting around like a cornered animal. He tore the apartment apart, searching for the missing ring, the one he'd stolen and lost. He babbled about bad luck, about being cheated, about needing more money. The next morning, I wore the ring to breakfast, my grandmother's ring, shining on my finger. Daniel stared, his jaw dropping. "The ring! Where did you find it?" I smiled sweetly. "Oh, this old thing. I found it tucked away in a coat pocket I haven't worn in ages. Silly me, I must have put it there for safekeeping and forgotten all about it." My story was plausible, infuriatingly so. He couldn't question it without admitting his own theft. Relief washed over his face, so potent it was almost comical, quickly followed by a renewed desperation. The ring was safe, but his debts were not. He was deeper in the hole than ever, and the sharks I'd sicked on him were circling. The final act of this particular revenge loop played out where it all began: the Golden Palace Casino. My casino. Daniel, desperate for a big win to cover his escalating losses, was playing in the VIP room. He was playing recklessly, trying to cheat. The cocktail waitress, the spilled drink, the exposed card. It was all perfectly staged, a repeat of the scene I'd witnessed so many times in my nightmares, but this time I was the director. The casino manager, a stern, unyielding man handpicked by me for his integrity and his ability to intimidate, descended upon Daniel's table. "Mr. Hayes," he said, his voice like chips of ice, "we have evidence of cheating, and then there is the matter of your outstanding IOUs." He produced a stack of them, Daniel's shaky signature on each one. The total was astronomical. Daniel blanched. He stammered. He protested. He claimed he was being framed. The other players, my professionals, looked on with cold amusement. The manager was unmoved. "Payment is due immediately, Mr. Hayes, or we will be forced to take further action." Security guards, large and impassive, materialized by Daniel's side. He looked around wildly, his eyes finally landing on me as I observed from a discreet distance. Just as I had at the start of this elaborate charade, his face crumpled. He stumbled towards me, his bravado gone, replaced by a raw, pleading panic. "Ilara, darling, you have to help me. They're framing me. It's a mistake. You have to bail me out, please." He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. I looked at him, my expression calm, my eyes cold. I remembered another time, another life, when I would have done anything to save him, to believe him. Not anymore. "Bail you out, Daniel?" I asked softly, my voice carrying clearly in the sudden hush of the VIP room. "Why would I do that?" I gently removed his hand from my arm. The game was over. Checkmate. "I have some emergency savings," I told Daniel, my voice even, betraying none of the triumph thrumming beneath the surface. "Perhaps we can use that." His face, still ashen from the casino debacle, flickered with a desperate hope. He clutched at the straw I offered, oblivious to the fact that it was attached to a very large, very sharp hook. We drove to the bank, the silence in the car thick with his unspoken pleas and my unrevealed intentions. The bank manager, a Mr. Henderson, no relation to the investor, but the irony was delicious, greeted us personally. His deference towards me was palpable, almost obsequious. Miss Sterling, always a pleasure. How may we assist you today? He barely acknowledged Daniel, who stood awkwardly to the side, a puzzled frown creasing his brow. Daniel wasn't stupid, he was just self absorbed. The manager's unusual courtesy towards me, the way he called me Miss Sterling, not Mrs. Hayes, began to sow seeds of suspicion in his mind. In the plush confines of the manager's office, I laid my cards on the table, figuratively speaking. Daniel, I began, my voice calm, almost gentle. There's something you need to understand. The emergency savings aren't just a small nest egg. I paused, letting the weight of my unspoken words hang in the air. I've been building a business empire since long before you and I were married. In fact, since before we even met this second time around. His eyes widened. Second time? What are you talking about? I leaned forward, my gaze direct and unflinching. I remember everything, Daniel. Our first life. Your gambling, your affairs, Emma. How you lost my grandmother's ring the first time. How I died. He stared at me, his face a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. You're insane. Am I? I smiled, a chilling, humorless expression. Mr. Henderson, perhaps you could confirm the primary account holder for Phoenix Holdings? And perhaps the majority shareholder of the Golden Palace Casino Group? Mr. Henderson, ever the professional, cleared his throat. Indeed, Miss Sterling, both entities are under your principal ownership and control, Miss Ilara Sterling. Daniel looked from the manager to me, his mouth agape. The pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture far more terrifying than he could have imagined. Phoenix Holdings, the investor. In my company. That was you. His voice was a hoarse whisper. All along, Daniel, I confirmed, my voice soft but edged with steel. Every loan, every term, every restructuring, I owned you, Daniel, and you never even suspected. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from Alistair. She's here. The door to the manager's office burst open, and Emma stumbled in, her face frantic, her eyes wild. Alara, what is going on? I just got a call. Some development company. They said they've bought Mom and Dad's house. They said you own that company. She looked from me to Daniel, her panic escalating. What have you done? I secured their retirement, Emma, I said calmly. Something neither you nor Daniel ever seemed concerned about. Before Daniel could process this new revelation, the office door opened again. This time, it was Tyler, Daniel's best friend. He looked pale, his usual confident smirk replaced by an expression of profound guilt. He didn't look at Daniel, he looked at me. Tyler? Daniel croaked, his world visibly crumbling around him. What are you doing here? Tyler took a deep breath. I've been working for Alara for years, Dan. Since shortly after she came back. He finally met Daniel's gaze. I owed her for not speaking up in your first life, for watching you destroy her and doing nothing. I helped her gather information, make connections. I was her eyes and ears when you thought I was yours. The final nail in Daniel's coffin was delivered by Marcus Thorne, who entered the office with his usual air of quiet authority. He nodded curtly at me. Marcus? Daniel pleaded, his voice cracking. Tell me this is some kind of sick joke. You're my partner. Marcus adjusted his tie, his expression coolly appraising. My loyalty, Daniel, has always been to the person who demonstrates the greatest potential for success and stability. For a while, I thought that might be you, despite your proclivities. But Miss Sterling here, he gestured towards me, has proven to be a far more astute and formidable player. He placed a file on Mr. Henderson's desk. These documents outline the full extent of Mr. Hayes's liabilities to Phoenix Holdings and, by extension, to Miss Sterling, including the IOU from the Golden Palace. Daniel sank into a chair, his face ashen, his body trembling. He looked at me, truly looked at me, perhaps for the first time. Not as his naive wife, not as his victim, but as the architect of his complete and utter ruin. Every aspect of his life, his business, his finances, his friendships, his betrayals, had been meticulously, secretly controlled by the woman he had so carelessly destroyed. The woman he thought he knew but never really saw. The predator had become the prey, and the trap, 5 years in the making, had finally, irrevocably snapped shut. His empire of lies had crumbled, and I was standing on the ruins, my grandmother's ring glinting on my finger like a star in the ashes. The fight went out of Daniel like air from a punctured lung. He just sat there, amidst the wreckage of his life, his face buried in his hands. Then came the breakdown. Sobs racked his body, harsh, ugly sounds. He confessed everything: the gambling, the lies, the affair with Emma, the ring, the way he'd systematically dismantled my trust and my finances in our first life. He begged for forgiveness, his words tumbling out in a torrent of self-pity and belated remorse. "I'm sorry, Alara. I swear I'm so sorry. I was a fool, a monster. Please give me another chance. I can change." Emma, ever the opportunist, saw her chance to salvage something for herself. Tears streamed down her face, real ones this time, I thought, born of fear, not sympathy. "Alara, please, not Mom and Dad's house. It's all they have. I'll do anything. I'll break all ties with Daniel, I swear. Just don't let them suffer because of us." Tyler, his face etched with shame, stepped forward. "Alara, I know my apologies mean little, but I have records, evidence of Daniel's fraudulent business practices, things Marcus might have overlooked. I'm willing to testify, to do whatever it takes to help you make things right, to truly make amends for my silence." I listened to them all, my expression unreadable. The desperate pleas, the tearful confessions, the belated offers of help. In my first life, these words, this scene, might have moved me, might have tempted me to offer some misguided absolution. But I was no longer that woman. I had walked through fire and emerged forged in something harder, something unbreakable. When they finally fell silent, their eyes fixed on me, searching for a flicker of mercy, I calmly picked up a pen from Mr. Henderson's desk. He slid a set of documents towards me. Divorce papers, already prepared. I signed my name, Alara Sterling, with a firm, steady hand. "No," I said, my voice quiet but absolute. "No forgiveness, no second chances, no deals." I looked at Daniel. "You had your chance, Daniel. More than one, in fact. You wasted them all." I turned to Emma. "Mom and Dad's house is safe. It's in a trust, in their names. They won't be evicted. But your access to their finances, and mine, is over." To Tyler, I offered a curt nod. "Alistair will be in touch regarding your evidence, Tyler. Perhaps some good can still come from your regrets." I stood up, my grandmother's ring a comforting weight on my finger. "This isn't about revenge anymore," I said, looking at each of them in turn. "It's about justice. It's about consequences. And it's about me, finally, living my life on my own terms." I walked out of the bank, leaving them to the ruins of the lives they had built on deceit and betrayal. I didn't look back. The sun warms my skin, the gentle lapping of turquoise waves a soothing soundtrack. I'm on a private beach in the Maldives, a world away from the steel and glass of New York, a universe away from the wreckage of Daniel Hayes. My grandmother's ring still adorns my finger, no longer a symbol of what was lost, but a testament to what was reclaimed. It's now complemented by other vintage pieces I've collected, each with its own story, its own quiet beauty. Nearby, the joyful shouts of children echo from a newly built schoolhouse, its bright colors a vibrant splash against the lush green. I funded it, along with a community center and a small medical clinic. The wealth I accumulated, the empire I built to ensnare Daniel, is now being used for something else, something better. Not for revenge, but for renewal. For creating, not destroying. It turns out building schools is far more satisfying than bankrupting fools. I watch a group of local children learning to read, their faces bright with concentration, and a genuine smile touches my lips. This is peace. This is purpose. A shadow falls over my book. I look up. A man stands there, tall, with kind eyes, and a warm, hesitant smile. He looks vaguely familiar. "Excuse me," he says, his voice gentle. "I don't mean to intrude, but aren't you Alara Sterling? We met briefly a long time ago at a charity auction in London." I search my memory. Yes, a fleeting encounter in my first life, a polite conversation, a spark of something interesting before Daniel had pulled me away, jealous and possessive. I hadn't thought of him since. Until now. I believe we did, I reply, closing my book. He gestures towards the empty lounge chair beside me. May I? I smile, a real smile, open and free. The past is settled. The future is mine to write, a blank page shimmering with possibilities. Please, I say. I'd like that.